everybody. Demopod, the Demolition Podcast, episode 13.
13.
A little spooky, a little scary. I hope this is going to be a good episode because, 13, bad number. But here's the thing. For episode 13, I thought it would be kind of cool to go back into the annals of history and talk about the Gimmick match. And yes, you're maybe wondering, what is the Gimmick match? Well, the Gimmick match is anything that's outside of the norm of a traditional one-on-one singles or a tag team match. The Gimmick match can actually have its own tradition over time. And we're going to talk about the Royal Rumble 1989, for instance, to open up this episode. We didn't really get to cover the iconic 1989 Royal Rumble yet since we've been doing this podcast. It got mentioned a little bit back in the Andre the Giant episode because, of course, Axe was number 1, Smash was number 2, and then Andre the Giant was number 3, and all hell broke loose. But we're going to go back in time right now to the Royal Rumble, January 1989. Axe and Smash, Barry and Bill, how we doing?
Very good. Very good.
Really good.
It's good to be here with you guys tonight. I want to go back to the inaugural Royal Rumble pay-per-view event. And that was when you guys came out respectfully as number 1 and number 2. Here's what I really want to know, though. Do you remember the first time you heard about the Royal Rumble match and the concept of it? Of course, you guys had probably participated in countless battle royals over the years, but it was Pat Patterson who came up with the idea of, instead of having everybody start in the ring at once, why don't we have 2 guys start out? And the time intervals have changed over the years, but I believe back then it was 2 minutes. Every 2 minutes, somebody else is going to come out at random. The fans won't know who it is. It's going to be friend versus friend, foe versus foe, a mix of in between. Do you remember hearing about that concept and being interested in it?
Well, I don't remember hearing about the concept itself, but I liked the concept because, as you mentioned, I had been in a number, and Barry too, of battle royals where you got 15 or 20 guys in the ring at the same time starting out, and it's chaos.
Mm-hmm.
You really can't, the fans can't keep up with all the movement and emotion. And it's very, very dangerous when you got, say, 15 guys, 20 guys, all big dudes in there moving at the same time. You've got to have your head on a swivel. So I really enjoyed the concept of 2, add 1, add 1, add 1. And it grew, but it never got to the point where there was 20 guys in there. I mean, there might have been 8 or 10,
yeah,
but there wasn't like 20 guys. How many was in that? 21 guys or 30 people in that?
30
people. So if that would have been 30 at the beginning, people, you can't catch up. You can't visualize all that. So I like that concept.
Yeah, and I remember when the first one was going on, when they were talking about it, I thought, now this is going to be kind of weird, because you've been in so many battle royals and you really didn't know what it was going to be like. But once you did it, and like Bill said, there's less people in the ring. You could actually do a spot in the ring if you wanted to. Mm-hmm. Or, there's so many different things you could do because there's not as many people in there. What a lot of people don't realize, in a battle royal, you get 20 guys in there, and the smallest guy is 300 pounds. That's a lot of weight in that ring. So these rings that they had for that, they're rock hard. I mean, they're so stiff. So now all the matches up to that, you're killing yourself, slamming, and everyone's like landing on the floor just to keep that ring up for the battle royal. And so it was so nice all of a sudden to have the Royal Rumble. It just made things a lot easier for the guys.
And traditional battle royals where you have everybody in there from the onset, from the bell. A lot of inexperienced guys, they're trying to do, like Barry said, they're trying to do moves and maneuvers, and you got to be very cautious and aware of your surroundings, or you're going to get clipped without even knowing it.
And all the guys that kind of knew what they were doing, they all went to the corners. So,
Yeah.
You don't want to blow a knee out, have somebody come and hit you from the side and blow your knee out. So the kind of the rookie guys were in the middle of the ring where all the veterans would be to the corners,
Yeah. And I know you guys discussed this a little bit, like I said, back on our earlier Andre the Giant episode from a few months back. People that listen to this audio version on Spotify or other podcast platforms, they tend to listen to the episodes in order. What I've noticed with YouTube is that sometimes people will just stumble across a random episode. They didn't know the podcast existed. They'll come and go, oh, episode 8, let me check that out. And then they like it and they go back and watch everything else. So even though we discussed it already, if you could just let us know exactly what went down when you got to the arena that day, when you found out that you were going to be number 1 and number 2, respectively.
Well, I knew that I was going to be number 1, but honestly, and we've discussed this, I don't remember knowing that Barry was going to be number 2.
Mhm.
When I went to the ring, I loosened up and stretched and all that stuff, getting prepared to go into the match. I just thought it's going to be a long night because I'm number 1. And I think you said there was 30 guys there. And the music played, I went to the ring. And like I said before, the music stopped. Then it started again. And I'm thinking, oh my, they screwed up. They played my music again. But then I see Barry coming down. So, and I knew I think we had 2 minutes. We're not going to stand there with a thumb up our rear end. We might as well loosen up. We didn't know who was coming third. And I think both of us realized that's probably the first time we enjoyed seeing Andre come down. Because we stopped beating up on each other and took it out on Andre.
Yeah, and I was in the back, and I didn't know I was going second. And there was probably 3 or 4 or 5 of us that didn't know when we were going to go out. And I can remember before you went out, Bill, I went and talked to Pat Patterson. I said, Pat, when am I going out? Or the chief or somebody. They go, just be ready. We don't know. We're making some changes, kind of a deal. So they just said, just be ready. So Bill goes out there, and I'm kind of laughing. What happens if Bill's out there for an hour or something? Better him than me, right? And then all of a sudden, the music hits again. I went, what? And they go, smash, you're up. And I was like, holy cow, what am I going to do now? So I'm walking to the ring, and Bill's in the ring, and I'm thinking to myself, what are we going to do? You can't have 2 minutes of doing nothing. I got to go in there and start laying into him, and he's going to lay into me, and that's just how it worked out. And 2 minutes is a long time to be punching and kicking each other too.
Yeah.
So I find one thing surprising and one thing not so surprising. What I find surprising is that you guys didn't know that Andre was going to be coming out as number 3, because, the stories that we hear as fans about the lore of Andre is that everything was very systematic. Andre didn't do anything that he didn't want to do. So I would have imagined that there would have been a meeting. Again, me with my meetings. I talked about this, the Survivor Series episodes. I would have thought there would have been some type of a meeting where they would be like, okay, you guys are going to go out there, then Andre's going to come down. But why I'm not surprised is because they kept selling. If you go back and watch that old footage, it's every man for himself. It's every man for himself. That was the tagline. They just kept pushing that. So why not have the most dominant tag team start out as number 1 and number 2? Because that's really the payoff, right? You're telling the fans right away, even these guys that are a dominant ass-kicking tag team, they're going to be beating each other up in there. And I think that just perfectly solidifies what the Demolition gimmick was. I even remember promos, I think actually would often famously say, sometimes we beat each other up. So I think that was perfect for having that first Royal Rumble. Oh, actually, it wasn't the first Royal Rumble. It was the first one on pay-per-view. There was the previous one that was the USA special. Did you guys ever do more Royal Rumbles on the road? I've heard stories that over the years, sometimes at house shows, they would have like a 20-man version of the Royal Rumble. Do you recall doing any of those over the years?
No, I don't recall any of those.
I can't remember them either. And maybe there was, but I just can't remember those.
No, I don't believe we were involved in them.
Yeah, like you said it. I mean,
but you're talking about beating each other up. That was part of Master Fuji's training philosophy. He put us down in the dungeon, and we'd say, "Okay, fight to make it to the door, and the first man out gets a bonus."
So. Yeah, no, it's definitely wild that, if you're going to say every man for himself, you got to give that to the people. And you guys, I think, really were the benchmark for that going forward, because in Royal Rumbles since then, everyone has had that situation where it's like, oh, those two guys are friends. Are they going to go at it? And of course they are, because Axe and Smash set the precedent. Now they're all just following afterwards. So that's pretty cool to see. Did you guys ever think that this would become such a monumental event? I mean, there hasn't really been that many changes to the Rumble over the years. I know one year they tried to make it 40. That didn't work out. Now there's a women's Rumble every year, which I think is great. But I'm actually going to make the argument now that I don't know if a lot of people would agree with this. If all these other big events are going to be 2 nights a year, you're going to have a 2-night WrestleMania, 2-night SummerSlam. I think it would make sense for it to be a 2-night Royal Rumble now, only because it's exhausting to make the fans have to watch a full length 30 women's Rumble and then a 30 men's Rumble. I remember watching just a couple weeks ago this past Royal Rumble event, and both matches on their own were good, but to have to sit through 2 of those in one card, it's kind of overkill. Whereas traditionally, you just had 2 or 3 undercard matches and the Rumble itself.
I agree 100% with you. I mean, I don't know. I mean, all 3 of us are fans of wrestling, but I don't know if I have the stamina to watch 2 long events like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, and now especially with, the whole ramifications of the winner getting the main event title shot at WrestleMania, the champion of their choosing, it's really evolved into something entirely different. But while we're talking about the Royal Rumble as a specialty event, I figured we could kind of break it down into talking about the gimmick matches themselves. And if you guys had any particular favorite ones, whether they be because you thought it was a great payoff to a story or they were just fun to participate in, were there ever any type of gimmick matches that were presented to you that you guys were like, I don't know if that fits for this? Or was there ever anything that you heard about that never came to fruition that maybe the public never saw? Anything crazy or outlandish that was ever presented to you?
Well, I don't know about Barry, but if somebody proposed a scaffold match to me, I would certainly not do it. A lot of these guys have done it,
I
but there's
couldn't do
no
that.
way I'm going to get it. I have a hard time going off the high dive knowing that there's water underneath.
I feel like, we were talking off air about, I mentioned the Starrcade match between Piper and Greg Valentine, right? With the dog collar. Like, that was a bitter feud. And that was the culmination of it. And I feel like those matches existed for that reason. Whereas nowadays, it's kind of like, you know what we're going to do? Hell in a Cell. And it's like, well, do those guys really hate each other? Like, what's going on here? And I get that. And, now all these things become tradition. But I think that the gimmick matches have kind of been overused over time, right? Like, take something as simple as the lumberjack match. You got 2 guys in the ring, they're going at it. It used to be that the lumberjacks were there to make sure a guy didn't run away, because we used to always see those storylines where I can think of off the top of my head Shawn Michaels in his first Intercontinental title run, getting counted out on purpose. Honky Tonk Man would always do everything cowardly to hold on to that damn Intercontinental title. Well, you know what? Now we're going to make sure that we're going to put a bunch of guys around the ring, and the babyface is going to have his posse, the heels are going to have their posse, and this is going to get settled. That makes sense. And it can also create new storylines out of that. Well, this guy mixed it up with this guy outside the ring. We can branch off. And now I just feel like the gimmick matches kind of just get thrown out there. Like, oh, yeah, you know what? We want to see who's going to bleed first. Let's have a first blood match.
Well, one of the matches, and I don't know if there's ever been a second, is when Barry was involved in that match here in Atlanta.
Yes.
Has there ever been a second one of those, Barry?
No, and it was supposed to be, my match, so it would have been maybe one a year or something like that. That's how it was supposed to be, and that was a really fun match.
I don't want to cut you off. I just want to, for the people that are listening, you're of course talking about the now infamous King of the Road match from WCW Uncensored. Just to lay the table for everybody, that was a match between Barry as the Blacktop Bully against the natural Dustin Rhodes. And it was something that had never been done before. I'm going to have Dan throw up some pictures and post here. And it's just wild to think about it. You guys were you were in a tractor trailer that was covered in, what was it, chicken wire, the trailer itself?
Chicken wire, and it was full of hay and horse poop. And I mean, it was brutal. But it was actually a really fun match. And when they first came up with it, Mike Graham was the one who came up with that. Both Dustin and I said, you know what, this is going to be fun, But we didn't know we were going to be going 60 miles an hour and they're going to slam on the brakes. And, we went around, Atlanta and had police cars in the front and back and everything. I mean, it was a big production. helicopters, and
That's at 285. Yeah,
and
the loop around.
it was like, holy cow. And Mike Graham told us ahead of time. He says, this is going to be a big match. You're going to have to bleed and do whatever you can in there. So we did, and it ended up being where we got fired for having blood in the match. And Dustin and I, we both thought that we just had a great match, and I think they cut out a whole lot of that match because of all the blood. But it was something you're never going to forget. And I think they could have had more and more of them, and we could have figured out more things to do in there as they gone on.
I'll tell you this, as a kid growing up, I was I was very fortunate to have parents that allowed me to order most of the WWE pay-per-views. If there was an exceptional thing going on in WCW, and this is, of course, just prior to the Monday Night Wars, then I started to watch a lot more of those as well. But it was that match that, made me ask my parents, like, can I order this pay-per-view? Because, I mean, I'm a 12-year-old kid. Like, yeah, I want to watch these guys wrestle on a truck, a moving truck. I mean, who wouldn't want to watch that? You're saying, which I never heard before with any other interview that you've done, that was going to be a yearly thing. That was going to be your match.
That was going to be my match. And that's why I won that match, because later on, it could have been Dustin. We could have had a rematch, and then maybe he could have won, or, Steamboat or somebody that we were going to work with. But, it was so much fun that it wasn't like you're going in the ring, because, I've been in a lot of gimmick matches, but that was completely off the wall, where even, I think everybody wanted to see what the heck it was. And, it was an uncensored match. So when we're bleeding in there, you would think, well, how are you going to censor that? It's uncensored. You can do anything you want. Well, the office didn't like that. So that night, Dustin got fired, I got fired, and Mike Graham got fired. So that was a tough one.
And I've heard you talk about it, again, most recently on Eric Bischoff's podcast with Conrad Thompson, 83 Weeks. You were on there, and you're friends with Eric. But I give you a lot of credit, Barry, because I couldn't imagine what it's like to get fired for something that you were told to do. You were told by Mike Graham, who at that time, rest in peace. I liked Mike. He was a fun guy. He's management. He's right there. He's telling you to do this. You report to him. And then people above him are now punishing you for that. That has to be a bitter pill to swallow when it goes down.
It was terrible. And, but I understood it, and I suppose I could have sued him for gazillions of dollars, but, I never did sue anybody like that. But we definitely had a case, that's for sure. But, Eric promised me a job back, and I got a job back. So he did exactly what he said he was going to do. So, he was a man, unlike Crockett, but one of the funnest gimmick matches I ever had was called the Coal Miner's Glove match down in Louisiana.
I love that you brought that up. Go for it.
Hacksaw Jim Duggan. And I mean, I had so much heat down there with Nikolai being my partner and being a Russian, and you could do anything you wanted, and the people wanted to kill you. And when Jim Duggan would go up to go get the glove on the top of a pole, and he would get about 6 inches from the glove, and then Nikolai would run down and hit the ring and pull him off. The people wanted to kill us. It was the funnest matches you've ever had. I mean, it was, Bill, you've had matches like that where it's just, you have the people in the palm of your hand, anything you wanted to do. That's what wrestling's all about.
I would even go as far as to say that there's probably memories that fans have from the territory days when, there was no television or pay-per-view going on. Some of these gimmick matches probably got really crazy in some of those arenas where there were no cameras present, right?
Yeah.
A lot of the gimmick matches were the culmination of a long standing argument with your opponent. Like Barry knows very well. Ivan Koloff was the master of the Russian chain match. They had cage matches. They were the end. You mentioned the lumberjacks. Well, the lumberjacks would carry over, and eventually there was outside interference in the lumberjacks. Well, how do you stop that? You have the cage,
Yeah.
and they all had meaning. Like you said, I think it meant more then than it does now because sometimes they just throw people into this gimmick match where there was no build up for it.
Mhm.
Sometimes that build up was a
Yeah.
year and a half, and it culminated with now we're going to get a winner.
Mhm.
Now it's finally going to be settled.
It's funny you said that because I had a match in Houston, Texas. It was me and Butch Reed against the Junkyard Dog, and I think it was Hacksaw Duggan. And we had matches. We cheated to win or did something, and we scooted out and we left. We left the building. So the next match was going to be a barbed wire match where you couldn't leave the ring. And that was one of those matches, Bill, where it's like, God, I've never worked a barbed wire match. I don't want to get all sliced up in there and everything. And Butch says, it's no problem. Just follow me. So we get in the ring. And right away, he calls a spot where those guys throw us into the barbed wire. And we hit that barbed wire and we hit it hard. And I mean, it stuck the crap on me.
Yeah.
So then Butch, he comes up to me and he had a razor blade in his hand. And he started hitting me in the back with the razor blade, just puncturing it to get blood to come down. And I go, Butch, what the hell are you doing?
Oh.
Yeah, and so I did the same thing to him, and it was that the baby faces never hit the barbed wire, but we hit it, and they killed us and beat us. But I mean, that was a perfect example of a gimmick match right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like, because nowadays, and I'm not here to knock on any form of professional wrestling that people enjoy. There's a whole subculture now of death match wrestling where, people buy a ticket and they go and there's 7 matches on the card and it's literally each match, oh, well, how can we top what the guy before us did? And
Oh, geez, yeah.
yeah,
It's
and you know
terrible.
what? It is terrible. And I agree with you. I feel like ECW, unfortunately, gets the blame put on them for that. But I also think that people that weren't really around watching ECW don't realize that even the violence that took place in ECW pales in comparison to what we're seeing with this deathmatch wrestling now. And also, a lot of the violence in ECW was storyline driven, right? You had Tommy Dreamer and Raven. They were apparently enemies as kids at summer camp. And Tommy bullied Raven. And then, of course, you have the Sandman and Raven. There was the whole feud over the Raven. Raven was with Sandman's wife and was trying to control his son. I mean, those are bitter personal stories where you would expect violence to take place, especially like Barry, you said, you're playing a Russian defector. Everybody's going to want to kick your ass. So it makes
they want
sense.
to kill me.
Yeah. But again, nowadays, I just kind of feel like it's been glossed over. I mean, look at the ladder match. My understanding, and I don't know if you guys can confirm this or not, Bret Hart brought the ladder match over to the United States as something to do with Shawn Michaels. And there is footage out there of them having some ladder matches early on. But then it wound up becoming Shawn Michaels and Razor Ramon, the famous one at WrestleMania 10. Shawn had been suspended. He was Intercontinental Champion. He left with the belt. They crowned a new Intercontinental Champion. It was Razor. Shawn comes back from his suspension. You're not the champ. I'm the champ. What do? Let's hang the 2 belts from the ceiling. Whoever goes up brings them. They're the champ. Makes sense. It's logical. It's a storyline thing. Now things get kind of thrown out there. Do you know when you're involved in a storyline, either of you as a tag team or singles performers, okay, we're going to start out, we're going to do this for X amount of weeks and it's going to culminate in this gimmick match? Or do they tell you while you're already in it, you know what, we're going to try having the big steel cage blow off, or we're going to have the coal miner's glove blow off? How does that work out? Do you know going into the feud that you're going to end while having some kind of big gimmick match?
No, you don't. I've never been involved in a program, either singles or tag, where that far down.
Okay.
It depends on one, how successful the matches are. If the people are buying tickets and coming, then it grows, and then more thoughts are put into it, and then eventually they'll propose this or that. But to say, well, you guys are going to work with X and Y, and down the road 9 months you're going to do this, well, it might not last 9 weeks, with the chemistry and the matches and stuff. So I mean, I'm speaking for myself, and I'm sure Barry would
No,
justify that as well.
you hit it right on the nose, because they might think that Barry and Bill are going to have the greatest match of all time, and it might not be the best match of all time. So you can't plan that far ahead. But now, if we tear down the house and it's the greatest, well, then they'll come up with the next match, then the next match, and it all depends upon how that match is. But the guys now in these ladder matches and ECW, these guys are unbelievable, the stuff they're doing, but they're crippling themselves up, and some of them are getting hurt so bad they can't hardly work anymore. And it's just, that's what's so terrible. Each guy has to beat what the next guy does. And when we were doing it, it was, the blow off was a cage match or whatever, and then they wouldn't have a cage match again until somebody else had another blowout.
Yeah.
Right.
Now
you might have one every other year or so.
Yeah, now it's like, hey, let's just throw a cage match in there. Let's have a ladder match.
Exactly.
It'll draw.
And even talking about that ladder match thing, it used to be a one-on-one thing, and then of course the Hardy Boys and the Dudley Boys brought it to another level with the tag team. Then they threw Edge and Christian in there, and then it became the TLC thing. But now, I don't know. That even then, though, that made sense because you had the Hardy Boys doing the stuff with the ladders. You had the Dudleys doing the stuff with the tables, and you had Edge and Christian doing the concerto. So logically, okay, tables, ladders, chairs makes sense. Now, what we see are these Money in the Bank matches every year, which are, don't get me wrong, they're very entertaining, but they started out as something that happened at WrestleMania. Now it's its own pay-per-view. And now instead of just having the men have it, we're going to have the women do it as well. So now that twice a year you're going to see on one card 2 8-person ladder matches where there's going to be, I don't know, sometimes 10 ladders, sometimes 15. And every year they have to outdo what was done the year before. And I'll be honest with you, for the most part, they do pull it off. But eventually time's going to run out. I mean, how many more crazy things can you have 8 people do with ladders in a ring? It's insane.
I just hope somebody doesn't get hurt really bad.
Oh, they will, and that's the thing. I mean, it's
you can't tempt fate.
I worry about them as well because a lot of the things that I see, I just don't understand it.
Mm-hmm.
No, don't get me wrong. They're great athletes. They're athletic, but a lot of the stuff is like gymnastics. It's not wrestling, and they're taking so many bumps, like Barry mentioned. The propensity of potential injury greatly accelerates.
Yeah.
We used to wrestle. We used to wrestle for the idea that we're going to be in this business for a long period of time. And like you said, Ryan, they have wrestlers now that have to outdo the match before or the 2 matches or the 3 matches before. So if the first match just took a bump over the top rope, they got to do a flip over the top rope. Mm-hmm. Then the other guy got to do a flip over the top rope, back in, back over, and back out.
Yeah.
Well, when Mick Foley came off that cage with The Undertaker, I just was like, oh my God, please be okay. Because I don't know how one wrong move and you're done, and thank God he walked away from it, but not very well. And then, he came off the cage and did an elbow on the table too. It's just like, there's just too many things that can go wrong. And
well, look at Shane McMahon. Look at that Logan Paul stuff that they do. I mean,
Shane was unbelievable.
You just can't, like you said, Barry. You can't. There's only so many bumps in your body. There's so many things can happen to you. Successful, right? There's 10 times unsuccessful.
And I think it also comes down to, not just the exhaustion of the fans that are watching, but there has to be that emotional connection, right? You have to be able to see, I want this guy to kick this guy's ass. But it's really, in the end, I don't want to say there isn't a need for it because there's some gimmick matches that are very entertaining, but look at the feud that you had with the Powers of Pain, right? As a perfect example. That was a bitter feud, but you guys didn't have to, kill each other with chairs or jump off.
No.
It was just, you got in there and you beat each other up. And sometimes there might have been a 3-on-2 situation where they had Fuji with them and you had to beat up 3 guys and then you go back and forth. But if you're telling a story the right way, yes, sometimes it's going to get violent. There might be blood, whatever, but you don't need to be doing all this chaotic stuff. If you're really that angry with somebody, you're not thinking, well, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to climb to the top of a of a Titantron and jump off. No, you're just going to want to get your hands on them and hurt them.
Well, there's certain things that I wouldn't do, and I told you like that. I just say no. People don't understand that, but I just say no.
Has there been things that you've been approached about that you said no that you can remember offhand?
Oh no, I mean not in particular matches. I don't
Oh,
think
okay.
that I don't think anybody ever approached us with a match that like that outlandish stuff coming off the top of the cage and stuff. I think they realized that we're not going to do it. We don't need to do it.
But Bill,
A
remember,
lot of guys are in positions where they have to do certain things in order to stay involved.
I get it.
but
Barry,
Bill, that the one time Vince came up to us personally and he says, "Bill, I want you to come off the rope onto the floor. Barry, you hold them on the floor and you come off and do the finish off the second rope."
In
And
Oakland.
is that where it was, Oakland?
Yep.
And we both looked at each other and went, "Gosh, no! This is Bill has to come down on his hip to protect the guy, and then when he hits him, then I have to flip him just in time, otherwise it'll break my knee."
Yeah, definitely.
And we both looked at each other and went, "God, Vince, is there another thing we can do or something?" He goes, "No, that's what I want."
Yeah, but that was about a 10-foot drop, and yet remember also that's before they had mats around the ring.
Yeah, and we both were like, this would be the one thing that we would say no, we can't do, but we ended up doing it, and Bill got hurt and I got hurt doing it.
Yeah,
and then the guy that we're giving it to, he's just nice and easy the way he lands, But
and I think that was wasn't it Strike Force? It was
it might have been Tito.
Not Tito, the other kid.
Rick
Tom
Martel.
Zink.
Oh, Tom Zink. Well,
Tom Zink.
All right, so that was okay.
Rick
Wow.
Martel, that was Tom Zink. Yeah.
Were either of you seriously hurt, or?
Well,
I can still feel it now. The older I get, every day I get up.
I think that tore my knee up was the start of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, is there a part of you, because I don't want to get too away from this, because this is the first time that I've heard you guys, and out of all the episodes we've done, talk about saying no to something you were approached to, and then you decided, we're going to do it anyway. You come back through the curtain, you're obviously banged up. I mean, here we are. Axe is talking about he still feels it all these years later. Smash is talking about how it was the start of his knee problems. Is there a part of you now that's a little, you got some animosity towards Vince because you had said you didn't want to do it and you finally caved and did it? Does it ever get brought up again? Did they say, "Hey, sorry that we asked you to do that, thank you," or no? Is it just kind of like par for the course?
Well, Vince wouldn't say sorry anyway, but no, I think the reaction of the fans sort of countered all the pain that we had. It was really, and I think that's when, either shortly after that is when Zink left, so we were accredited with putting him out of the business. So it built to it.
But Bill took the brunt of that because it was, 10 feet in the air coming off on your hip on the floor. I mean, there's no way to protect yourself from that.
No, of course not.
So then and it looked phenomenal. It'd be kind of fun to pull that up, but I don't know.
I don't know if that was taped. That was just a live event.
Well, look, this is where you put it out to the fans of DemoPod, because some of the stuff that comes up in the comments where people say, "Hey, we saw this, we did this." Again, maybe if it wasn't taped, there will be people that were in attendance that night in Oakland that would like to drop a line. If it was taped and it does exist somewhere, I'm sure someone would find it. But wow, that really was a great story. I wasn't expecting that, because you knew before you were like, this is going to be bad, but you just.
Well, Ryan, we're both 300-pound guys.
Yeah.
And the bigger you are, the harder you do fall. It's different if you're, 180 pounds or 200 pounds and you're coming off. I mean, you don't hit as hard as you do when you're 300 pounds.
Yeah. you're both 300 pounds and you're on the road over 300 days a year. And that's why, again, we don't take anything away from the current crop of talent. I'm still a professional wrestling fan. I'll still, be watching clips of SmackDown this Friday on Sunday when I get a chance to watch it. But again, the reason these guys are also doing the things that they're doing now is because they don't have to be on the road 300 days a year. But the fact that you guys still had to go do something that you knew was not going to be beneficial physically for either one of you. It wound up doing some cool things for you guys, career wise, and it looked good to the fans that were in attendance. But, think about it. There weren't even cameras. We don't even think that was recorded. And you were still
and you know what? That you could have did anything else because it didn't even matter.
Yeah.
That's the worst part of it. It's not like that's the most memorable moment that the Demolition did. It was just a little spot
that you're still paying for all these years later.
Yeah.
Bill, I wanted to ask you, because I am not extremely well-versed in Japanese professional wrestling. There were moments, especially when I was a kid, and when WCW would bring over a lot of the guys like Kensuke Sasaki and the Great Muta and, some incredible talents. But, talking about gimmick matches, Japan, they talk about FMW and all those companies with Onita and stuff like that, it was just violence on top of violence. When you were working in New Japan, did you ever get approached about doing any type of crazy gimmick matches over there? Or is that really not par for the course with that fan base? Because even when you watch some of these hard-hitting matches from yesteryear and today, it's almost like the fans look at the matches the way that a crowd would look at a tennis match. It's very respectful. They react very differently. So I would imagine that fan base, there weren't a lot of gimmick matches, or am I mistaken?
For New Japan, I don't believe so.
Okay.
Old Japan, I don't think there was many as either. There was at one time there was multiple companies there. So in order for those smaller companies to attract fans, they'd have to be, outlandish and have these crazy matches and stuff like that. But for Inoki's group and Bubba's group, it was traditional wrestling. And you're absolutely right. When I first went over there, the fans were sitting quiet. They aren't like that now. They're like Americanized now. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the match, they'd give you your accolades. They'd, cheer and clap and stuff like that. But they appreciated what was going on in the ring. Mm-hmm. Now it's more Americanized, and they're like, rabid fans that we have here in the States or England or whatever. But I don't remember any other than the fact that maybe Abdullah the Butcher would have his fork out or his blades and all that, or Stan Hansen or Brody or Tiger Jeet Singh would have the sword and go through the fans, and they'd go through the crowds and stuff like that. That was probably the extreme of it. They weren't into chain matches. They weren't into barbed wire matches and stuff like the other companies were. Mm-hmm. But that's how they thought they had to draw fans. But the traditional two companies, I don't think they needed that.
Yeah, like I said, I think there's a place for it, right? There's always going to be that feud that it makes sense. I mean, the most recent one that I can think of off the top of my head was CM Punk and Drew McIntyre. They had some incredible matches that led up to that Hell in a Cell, and it made sense. I mean, it got very personal. There were a lot of personal shots taken. There were things that went down. I don't mind seeing that. I just think it's a little silly sometimes to say, hey, you know what? This is the big pay-per-view coming up, but, we're going to have an elimination chamber where these guys are going to get into this thing, and the winner's going to go to WrestleMania and, fight for the title. And it's like, well, why do they have to go through the elimination chamber and risk their lives to have a one-on-one world title match at WrestleMania? There's got to be some other type of way, but I get it now. It's all about the marketing and stuff like that. But I do feel that takes away from the special quality of seeing a real nasty feud culminate in a gimmick match. Before we wrap it up, though, I want to ask if off the top of your head, is there a specific type of gimmick match that you guys enjoyed the most? Doesn't have to be a specific match itself, but like, was there a time where you're like, you know what, I like doing the coal miner's glove, or I like doing the lumberjack? I would imagine that neither one of you were like, hey, I can't wait for that barbed wire, especially you.
Oh, I was fortunate. I never had any barbed wire matches. I'll let Barry talk about that. But I was in a number of with Mulligan and Igor and Wahoo McDaniel. I was in wrestling number 2.
Mhm.
Tons and tons and tons of lumberjack matches. I like those. And then with Mulligan again and wrestling 2, oh my goodness, probably 30 cage matches.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed them. I mean, they were hard, but I enjoyed them because it was a culmination. It was a blow off of the feud.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, then people always get confused too, I think, if they're a casual fan, because sometimes the lingo that's used, right? No holds barred, no disqualification. Oh, it's kind of like the same thing. I was always a big fan of the Falls Count Anywhere match. I always thought that was a really cool concept. It doesn't happen often. There was a period of time where I thought it was being done a little too much, but my introduction to it was, I believe, with Cactus Jack and Kevin Sullivan against the Nasties. That was the first time I remember seeing that. I also remember Kevin Sullivan and Chris Benoit having a wild one in the mid 90s, and they wound up in the men's room. And it was just funny because Dusty Rhodes was on commentary, and he's like, "Oh no, that guy's in the jump." I can't do a Dusty impersonation, but it was just wild, like, you know, to see that. Just fun, exciting stuff. And it is hard nowadays to come up with something new. I mean, we're about to see an Elimination Chamber pay-per-view. It's probably going to be already passed by the time this airs, but you know, it's been done before. It's been going on for a couple of years, but when you get to see something for the first time, that's really cool. So I'm wondering if anybody has in the comments an idea for a gimmick match. Doesn't have to be too outlandish or whatever. Drop the like, comment, share, subscribe. Also, make sure you follow Search and Destroy You on Instagram, as well as Demolition Pod, and follow Ryan Marr Comedy, Ryan Maher Comedy. We got a lot of great things coming up in the works. Axe and Smash, you got anything you want to plug before we say goodbye on episode 13? Bad Luck 13.
No, it's just great being with you guys again.
Yeah. Thanks for everything. It's I just hope everybody subscribes and keeps listening to these things.
I do too, and I can't believe this was episode 13. Everybody's internet connection was stable. There were no audio or visual glitches, so I think we just kind of upended that whole 13 superstition right there. Perfect.
Plus Amazon the book.
Oh, of course, Sickle Studs.
Buy the book.
Stolen Cars, 100%. That's Axe. That's Smash. I'm Ryan Marr. Have a great night, guys.
Thank you. See you later.
Here comes